Good morning. We have a quorum. Thank you all for taking time out to attend this meeting. Well, it won't be easy because there are meetings in 3 different rooms. I call to order the Bills Committee on Smoking Public Health Amendment Bill 2019 public hearing, 3rd meeting. Let's invite individuals and deputations to come in. Let me remind you that on the 13th and the 25th of April, we have conducted public hearings. We have received so far 203 deputations and public and members of the public. That excludes written submissions only. And we have the administration led by the Secretary. The clerk reminds me that this room is smaller than room 1, so each session will be 1.5 hours, which is a difference from my previous practice of 2 hours. The first session will last from 10 o'clock to 11:25. The second session will last between 11:30 and 1. The third session is between 2 and 3:25, and the fourth session is between 3:30 and 5 o'clock.
知道，唔得意，咁有趣。好，唔該晒。
Thank you. Those who are with us here, please pay attention. You'll find in front of you a microphone and an earpiece if you want to listen to other languages, and use the earpiece. Floor is channel 0. Cantonese is 1, 2 is English, and Putonghua is 3. Let me remind you that whatever you say here now and whatever you say in your submission is not protected by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. So please, that means you're responsible for what you say orally and on paper. You'll find in front of you points to note to members of the public attending electoral meetings. If need be, you may request a copy from our security staff. Each deputation and individual will have 3 minutes. If you can't finish what you would like to say, or if you have information to supplement, you may give us your submission now or later. On behalf of the administration, we have Professor Sophia Chan, Secretary, Ms. Amy Yun, Deputy Secretary, Assistant Commissioner Ms. Alice Lai, Head of Department of Health, Dr. Feng Ying, and Mr. Manny Lam. First is Ms. Julie Tran. Please start.
Sir, do you want me to stand or to sit?
Yep. You may start now.
Start? Okay. Okay. Joe Sun. Good morning, everybody. I'm here to speak about the proposed ban on the heated tobacco products that has recently been announced by the Hong Kong government. Although I am a non-smoker, I do have friends that either do smoke the traditional cigarettes or use these heated tobacco devices. From a non-smoker's perspective, I do really notice a difference between those who smoke the traditional cigarettes versus those that use the heated devices. I've lived in 4 different countries in the past 5 years, and I'm relatively new here in Hong Kong, which now I call home. I find that smoking here isn't as regulated as our neighboring countries such as Japan or Korea, where there are designated smoking areas allocated for the smokers. That being said, with Hong Kong being so densely populated, it's nearly impossible to move around the sidewalks, especially when someone is smoking a traditional cigarette and walking in front of you. I personally have to hold my breath and wave my hands in front of my face so I don't inhale the secondhand smoke and have the ash fly my face, hair, or clothing. I would even have to try to walk on the other side of the sidewalk just to avoid the smoke. This also relates to other settings such as bars and outdoor restaurant areas where I would simply leave the premise due to the heavy secondhand smoke from the traditional cigarettes. However, I don't feel the same impact or the need to leave when it comes to others smoking the heated devices. I think it is extremely unfair for the government to want to put a ban on these heated devices, not only because it takes away the smoker's choice from what they want to consume, but also for the non-smokers out there, like myself, who just wants a more regulated smoking environment. I understand there are concerns from the government that these products may be used by minors. However, I could say the same for many other legal age products available in the convenience stores and supermarkets across the country. I believe with the proper regulations put in place, the government can manage this concern appropriately, while still giving the legal age smokers better alternatives than to normal cigarettes. Thank you.
係，跟住第二位係
Second person speaker is Mr. Howard Chen, number 3. In our work environment, a lot of our colleagues used to smoke. In the past year or two, they have switched to electronic cigarettes. For other workers, whether they are smokers or non-smokers, especially to non-smokers, it is actually a big difference. Because for electronic cigarettes, the odor and the impact is a lot less. If you propose to ban it, that means our colleagues will have to switch back to traditional cigarettes. For non-smokers, we will have to suffer. I have read different reports. They said that electronic cigarettes are better than traditional cigarettes for smokers and non-smokers. Please reconsider. If you talk about other impacts, well, the government can use other ways to regulate them, just like the other lady. You may educate the public, regulate them. So if you allow e-cigarettes, I think for smokers and non-smokers, it will be something good. Thank you. Thank you. Next, number 5, Ms. Feng. Good morning, everyone. I'm a non-smoker, and I don't like people smoking near me, so I strongly support the smoking regulations. But this time they want to legislate to ban the sale of heat-not-burn cigarettes. Well, usually if you impose a ban, something will follow. You won't be able to ban everything. Banning something will just change something to the black market. Well, you don't you don't air your dirty laundry in the public. For something that is not good, they would do it stealthily. If they want to legislate to ban it, when other countries have not banned heat-not-burn cigarettes, the government, what we can see now is that they want to ban import and sale. They want to stamp out this alternative to traditional cigarettes to be used in the market. Well, they ban the sale but not ban the consumption. It's very contradictory, and of course it doesn't work. Hong Kong is a metropolis. Well, if visitors come to Hong Kong to find that everyone's smoking traditional cigarettes, it will be the laughing stock. The government's been talking about the truth. They want to ban heat-not-burn cigarettes, but they can't tell us the harm of heat-not-burn cigarettes. We can't help but wonder whether there is a hidden agenda. Youngsters don't really trust the government. Whenever the government launches a policy, they will doubt it. That's exactly because of lack of communication between the government and youngsters. They can't come up with a convincing argument. That's why there is no trust.
And they're walking far apart from each other. We don't want to see them take to the streets. I'm an educator, and I've been in the field for more than a decade. Based on my experience, I know that if you continue to adopt this domineering attitude to legislate, you will only increase the public discontent. I hope that the government will learn lessons from the past and adopt our advice to regulate alternative smoking products and even impose a heavier tax on them and increase publicity on the harm of smoking tobacco and to educate young people to stay away from tobacco products. That's much better than adopting a blanket approach. Thank you. Number 6, Dr. Tong Hong Lin. Good morning. Deputations, good morning. I'm Dr. Tong. Let me declare my personal interest. I'm not representing the tobacco industry or nor any stakeholder in the heated devices. I don't smoke, but as an ordinary member of the public, I want to state my opinion. As an academic, I like to do analysis as well. I'm just worried that if the government does not widely consult public opinions and then have the bill passed through the first, second, and third reading, then that's worrying to the public, and we'll be afraid as well because many of you may like to eat instant noodles with sausage and bacon or eggs. And if I'm a stakeholder in the field, catering industry, if I work, and if I find out that the next morning when I wake up, my job will be lost because the government is so concerned about our health that they quickly, impose a ban on processed meat, and then that means I'll lose my job overnight. So as an investor, that means I'll be broke overnight. Hong Kong itself hasn't got any resources. It relies on tourism, sound banking system, and foreign investments. Some foreign investors may want to invest in hamburger, French fries, sausage, processed sausage meat, salted fish, and so forth. So what if it happens that anytime there could be a ban on the products I sell, that I would not be able to sleep well. So and foreign investors would not be prepared to invest billions of dollars or millions of dollars in Hong Kong, and which means that the Hong Kong economy will be adversely affected. That means the public cannot have good night's sleep and investors are not investing. Then, well, you can see the state of Hong Kong's economy right now. I hope that the government, before you legislate, you can have a widespread public consultation to find out about people's issues, difficulties, and have a listening ear. Right as a child, I've learned that, and I've learned from superiors and adults that you need to adopt the following 6 principles in handling things: that is to be fair, just, open, transparent, legal, and reasonable. I don't want to discuss about the merits or demerits of smoking. I know the government is trying to work for the welfare of the people and to address our needs so that we can also freely give our views. Hong Kong people relies a lot on the support of the government. We trust the government, but most important, however, is I hope that the government can, before you legislate, have public consultation and discuss issues with us, and then we can continue to support it. Number 7, Mr. Saka Pufriga.
Hi, good morning. Today I'm representing my view as an individual, and it's based on the best of my knowledge. I've been in Hong Kong for close to 3 years, and one of the key concerns I see when I roam around is the smoke coming out from the cigarettes. I am myself a smoker, and I have family as well over here, and whenever I go and smoke, I restrict my daughter to not be near me if I smoke. However, it's highly impossible for me to keep her away if I am in some public places, and unfortunately she's also exposed to secondhand smoke, which is a discomfort to me. I've recently been to some parts of Europe, mainly the western parts of the Europe, and I've seen people smoking other alternatives. I don't know if there's e-cigarettes or so, but frankly what I saw is there is very little smoke coming out of it. In fact, that is also the case in many of the business centers I've been in Hong Kong for my client meetings. To be very candid, I'm not sure how safe these options are, but if we have enough evidences that these cigarettes are better than the conventional cigarettes, then I would urge government to give Hong Kong the better option to smoke. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 9, Mr. Chong Kin Ping. Declare of my interest. I'm a smoker myself. I used to smoke conventional cigarettes, and then beginning from this year, I switched to HMB products, and in terms of quantity, I smoke less, a half of the amount. I'm really totally opposed to the blanket ban. Why? Because the public doesn't know that there's a difference between e-cigarettes and HMB products. Many of you here may not know the difference either between them. What I'm holding now is a heated cigarette. You wouldn't know it is a heated cigarette if I had not told you. From the perspective of public health and well-being, the Secretary always mentioned it when we discuss the animal welfare policy. When I light that cigarette, when I hit this one compared to lighting a cigarette, what's the difference? The public doesn't know. We're saying that the public are not well informed. They don't know the difference. They think that whatever cigarettes it is, whether it's heated or not, they just create smoke. But is that the case? Is it that organizations who support the government saying that we should save the children, and because of that, then we need to look at it from a moral high ground, and we're walking on the right path? That's not real. The basis of a real discussion, a public consultation, a real public consultation in today's Hong Kong is needed. It's nothing about politics. It's just about very simple livelihood matter. Please think carefully whether shouldn't you differentiate between the products first before there is a public consultation? Secretary, that's absolutely needed. For many years, the government has demonized smokers. When there's a fire ambulance passing by, you see in the ad that a small girl is filmed covering her mouth. We've got 2 doctors with us who are doctors from the Tobacco and Alcohol Control Office. Why can't you use the same perspective in discussing the harm of alcohol? People drink drive and crash their vehicle. That would lead to casualties. And there's also Mr. Kwong, who's from Dikosh, who quoted a Kwun Tong magistrate case, which found that he was once fined for drink driving and penalized a fine of 5,000 in the court case of 3983/2116. So I don't know why he was appointed as head of caution. I don't know what the administration is up to, really. I hope that please don't be critical of us. Sophia Chen, Secretary, I'd like to thank you for what you said on the animal rights law. I will discuss with you on that separately, but on this issue of smoking, we need to have a real public consultation and let the public know openly that the difference between lighting a cigarette and hitting this device. And only after that should we talk about legislating. Mr. Simon must be next one.
Members of the committee, I'm a father with 3 young children. We chose Hong Kong as our home because it is a progressive and free society, supports freedom of choice, and provides an overwhelming sense of safety and security for its citizens. It's for this reason that I oppose the government's proposal to ban alternative tobacco products and e-cigarettes. I believe a regulatory framework in which these products can be sold only to adults, combined with education and enforcement, is the best approach for Hong Kong versus banning, which will not address youth initiation and children being exposed to the dangers of secondhand cigarette smoke. These dangers are well known and well documented. The government has stated that secondhand smoke generated by cigarettes is the same as the vapour generated by alternative tobacco products. I believe this is incorrect. In 2018, a report published by Public Health England stated that, compared with cigarette smoke, heated tobacco products are likely to expose users and bystanders to lower levels of particulate matter and potentially harmful compounds. In 2016, Cancer Research UK stated that the relative harm to both users and bystanders from secondhand vapour is likely to be much lower than that of secondhand cigarette smoke. There are many more studies that support this evidence. So my question is, why is the government not making these products available in order to protect our children from the exposures to dangerous secondhand cigarette smoke? The Hong Kong government has been very successful in reducing the rate of youth smoking. According to their own reports, the prevalence of cigarette smokers aged between 15 and 19 years old continues to drop, moving from 4.5% in 2000 to only 1% in 2017. This is a great achievement. The government says that it's concerned that these products would cause a gateway into cigarettes and that underage smoking will increase as a result of these products being available. I believe that this is misleading. In fact, Professor John Britton, who is the director of the UK Centre for Tobacco and Alcohol Studies, stated that we know that e-cigarettes do not normalise smoking, do not cause young people to start smoking, and have helped thousands of smokers to quit. The government has also claimed that in Japan, smoking incidents and the sale of cigarettes has increased as a result of the introduction of these products. That is also not true. Smoking incidents in Japan has dropped 18.2% since 2016, and market sales in Japan have also decreased by 13% from 2012 to 2017. Japan adopts a similar approach to Hong Kong, focused on education, regulation and enforcement. And just like in Hong Kong, the approach is working. If these measures have proven to be successful in Hong Kong and many other places, then why does the government feel that they can't apply the same framework to these new products that are better than cigarettes? Education, regulation and enforcement are key. A ban will not address the issue, and nor will it protect our children. Thank you.
12號位
Number 12, Ms. Van Yilan. Chairman, good morning. Declaration of interest. I'm someone who's trying to quit. In my process of quitting smoking, well, I of course look for cessation services. You always stress that there will be chewing gum or patches that we can use to replace cigarettes. But my personal experience is such that when I tried both options, I found that I became even more, my craving for smoking even got stronger because the nicotine content could be higher in those substitutes. On the contrary, when I felt that I was not doing okay, let me share with you. Ultimately, I tried the heated cigarettes. And then, after chewing gum or using the substitute devices, every day I need to smoke 6 smokers. But now with a heated device, which claimed that it didn't contain nicotine, I only had to use 2 cigarettes per day. And the effectiveness you can see in comparison with using those other substitutes. That the chewing gum is much higher. On the other hand, many people have said that regulating new tobacco products tends to focus on banning people under the age of 18 from buying them. Same rationale as the traditional tobacco ordinance. That means adults have the freedom of choice when it comes to whether to smoke. And even though smoking is really hazardous to health, doesn't mean that the government can neglect public views and the right to choose. If you have a black ban, however, banning new tobacco products, well, then you should consider, if you don't want the next generation to smoke, you should try to tackle it from the education perspective and inculcate proper values among them.
跟住係10
Thank you. Good luck with your cessation. Next, number 15, Lok Sin Tong. We are the Lok Sin Tong. We are a charitable organization. Our target groups are children. We're very concerned about the impact of e-cigarettes and heat-not-burn cigarettes. We have this morning submitted signatures from over 10,000 children that support the ban of e-cigarettes. there is a prevalence of use of electronic cigarettes all over the world. They use sales tactics targeting youngsters. When it comes to e-cigarettes, it doesn't state that it keeps promoting them as something that doesn't contain nicotine, or that they are not addictive. I think that the information is misleading, and it would attract youngsters to take them up. The sales tactics target youngsters and usually find them for sale in places that are frequented by youngsters, or places with easy access, say for example online sale. They are packaged as something novel, and they use different flavors to attract youngsters and children to use them. There are about 30 countries or so that put a ban on e-cigarettes. Hong Kong is rather backward. I urge the government to speed up the ban on e-cigarettes and new products. Youngsters, educators, parents and social workers have spoken to us. Last year we had conducted a questionnaire survey on the ban. We have received 4,600 valid questionnaires. Over 80% of them support the government's initiative to ban e-cigarettes and heat-not-burn cigarettes, as well as new products. A lot of youngsters have seen and have come into contact of e-cigarettes. About 30% of the respondents tried it. So if we are going to do something good for our young generations, and if we are going to create a smoke-free environment in Hong Kong, the Lok Sin Tong seriously urged the government to put a complete ban on e-cigarettes. I heard from some others that the impact and or hazards of e-cigarettes and heat-not-burn cigarettes are not as high. But have you looked into the ingredients and content? It contains carcinogens as well as nicotine. Well, from the users we have come across, they try to use e-cigarettes to quit. In the end, they take up traditional cigarettes as well. That means they have consumed more cigarettes than before. What we see is that NGOs and government don't cover e-cigarettes in their smoke-free cessation. Number 16, Mr. Chen Hao-lok. Mr. Chan. Good morning. I'm not a smoker. I'm just an ordinary member of public of Hong Kong. I oppose to the ban on e-cigarettes. I am very concerned. At the same time, I am shocked by the government's proposal. I run a small company that sells cars. A business has been dropping. It's more and more difficult to make a living. The government launched the Greater Bay Area initiatives, saying that it will be a bright future for youngsters if you want to start a business. I think that the government's proposal to ban e-cigarettes is unfair, and it won't be conducive to the Greater Bay Area development, and it will harm our livelihood. Hong Kong is a financial service center. Visitors and investors think Hong Kong is very safe and they are protected here. But now the government's going to ban e-cigarettes. Do you think that will be safe for visitors and investors? The government said that cigarettes will harm one's health, but they allow sale of traditional cigarettes, but they want to put a complete ban on e-cigarettes. I asked the government to regulate but not to ban it. Thank you. Number 17, Dr. Wen Lap Man. Good morning, everyone. I'm a social worker. I've been working with youngsters at risk for over 2 decades. Recently, I've been to Guangzhou and Macau to work with the government on counseling of youngsters. For my service group, over 90% of them, youngsters, are smokers. For many years, the government's initiative to combat drugs and to try to reduce number of smokers have been very successful. In relation to this proposal to ban e-cigarettes and alternatives, we support the government based on the following reasons. First, do not underestimate the appeal of these products, say for example vaporizers and heat-not-burns, to youngsters. Well, youngsters during the adolescence, they are quite rebellious. Smoking is very attractive to them. There are many characteristics of e-cigarettes that draw or attract the attention of youngsters. They would want to try. They are easily attracted to e-cigarettes. And don't underestimate the number of young smokers. E-cigarettes is not just popular among adults, it's popular among youngsters as well. Well, when you are under the age of 18, you can't buy e-cigarettes, but you can still procure them through different ways. Do not underestimate the portability of e-cigarettes and how easy it is to hide them. Because of that, youngsters can easily smuggle them into the campus and use them. Well, and there's also a risk of e-cigarette smokers to turn to drugs. There has been some studies conducted in the US saying that, e-cigarette is also a way for youngsters to later turn to cannabis. There was a research done in Macau showing that a lot of youngsters who started using e-cigarettes later turned to drugs. We support the government's proposal so that e-cigarettes and alternative smoking products will be banned. Yes, some people say that you may put a ban on it, but you won't be able to stamp them out. But if you don't ban them, that will be different. Number 18, Mr. Leung. Good morning, everyone. I'm a non-smoker, so I am not biased. I oppose to the complete ban on e-cigarettes and heat-not-burn cigarettes, but I strongly support regulation. I'm a youngster that strongly support the government. But this time round, with the proposed ban, I'm very disappointed. Well, if you use health as a reason, I think it's quite shallow. Well, using mobile phones subject you to the exposure of radiation. If one day the government say that, well, for the sake of your health, mobile phones will be banned, does it mean that Hong Kong people will have to write letters? So this is not just about public health, it's about freedom of choice. Well, there has been a number of controversial issues that have taken place in Hong Kong. For something so minor, is the government going to start another battle? Well, alcohol is also hazardous to health. But I keep seeing that government officials drink in banquets. Does it mean that government officials are setting a bad example? I have friends who are firemen, who are police officers. They used to smoke traditional cigarettes, but then they turned to e-cigarettes. Does it mean that e-cigarettes is the all evil? If there is a ban, then the product will turn underground, and there'll be illicit products, and it forces people to break the law. E-cigarettes is a culture in some major performance, say for example e-sport competitions. Are they going to ban computers because staring at the computer for a prolonged period of time is hazardous? My dad is a smoker of many years. And my mom's health is poor, and they've been bickering a lot because of that. But since my dad has turned to e-cigarettes, my mom could not smell the smoke, and my mom supported my dad to use e-cigarettes to quit. Even my other family members have turned to e-cigarettes. I don't understand why there should be a ban. I asked the government to accept the views of youngsters and Hong Kong people. Please do not deprive us of our freedom and choice. Number 19, Mr. Zheng Fulin. Declaration of interest first. I'm not a smoker. Smoking is hazardous to health, we know, but still there are a lot of smokers because they find more benefit than harm when they smoke. But when you smoke, there is secondhand smoke. I'm very sensitive to smoke. Well, I live with a smoker who's been smoking for 3 years. Every time he lights a cigarette, I thought that the world's going to collapse. But if several people smoke e-cigarettes, I don't feel uncomfortable at all. Maybe it's just subjective. I am studying jurisprudence. I know very well about the difference between heat-not-burn cigarettes and e-cigarettes. For heat-not-burn cigarettes, it's the heat is as high as 800 degrees. For traditional cigarettes, the temperature is as high as 800 degrees, but for heat-not-burn cigarettes is a lot lower. So it doesn't stand if you use scientific evidence to ban e-cigarettes and heat-not-burn cigarettes. Well, if the decision doesn't affect the public, it should be respected. This bill will affect a lot of people. There should be sufficient public hearing. It should be supported by sufficient scientific evidence and should be accepted by majority of the public. Well, given the current political atmosphere, you can't use an across-the-board approach. You're only chasing it to the underground market. I suggest that instead of a ban, there should be regulation. Thank you. Number 20, Mr. Chen Menwei, Mr. Chen. Well, I work in the creative industry. I have my own business. I sell coffee beans. Well, I have a startup. I attach a lot of importance on creative industry. A lot of businesses started because of creative ideas. Now the government proposes a ban. Hong Kong is a free place. Hong Kong, equity and freedom is the core value of Hong Kong. We have free port. I oppose to the proposed ban. There hasn't been any discussion or public consultation. They proposed a complete ban. I would like to ask you, have you conducted public consultation? If you have, that means it's not public enough. Are you making the decision on behalf of Hong Kong people? You're not doing it on my behalf. There are some professionals who blindly support this bill. You can call it officials, defending officials. Well, I don't really support it. There hasn't been any clinical tests result or any scientific evidence put forward, so you can't convince me why e-cigarettes is not good. You just say it's not good and you want to ban it. Why don't you regulate by, say for example, putting in place a licensing regime? This will harm some industries. You have to dispel public concern.
Why don't you broaden the tax base? Do you still have to rely on high land premium in order to gain profits? I'm also opposed to claims that the heated cigarettes can be addictive. There are all sorts of things that can be addictive. Why don't you ban them all? So in conclusion, I'm saying that the government should educate and launch publicity. And, I'm opposed to any blanket ban. Thank you. Number 21, Mr. Tam Kim-well. Good morning, members, chairman. I'm not a smoker. I'm just speaking as an individual. I'm a self-employed truck driver that always goes in and out of Hong Kong into the mainland. I'm busy with making a living, but now the government is launching a new policy. Well, I think that could actually pose a threat to my livelihood. Why am I here today? Because I want the government to think twice. That is, with the amendment of the law, it could actually undermine the ability of many people to make a living. Hong Kong has been a free trade city. You're saying that even if you were to develop the Greater Bay Area, the latest amendment, however, has not taken into consideration the 9 cities and 2 SARs in the Greater Bay Area. Only Hong Kong treats e-cigarettes and H&B products as drugs. That means we can't even have those products imported into Hong Kong. Shenzhen has more than 100 companies selling e-cigarettes. Have you considered what kind of impact the proposal could have on our livelihood as cross-border truck drivers? The blanket ban would do nothing good to the economy of the Greater Bay Area, and also it would adversely affect the business environment in Hong Kong. Now many transport companies are working in the Pearl River Delta area, and should the amendment be passed, then many of the transshipment businesses could be forced to move to other places, cities. Well, there are also claims that sugar, salt are not healthy. So if you want to ban anything that's not healthy, then you would need to ban all those products and causing many people to lose their jobs. Without companies, without transshipment, without transport workers, with no drivers, that means many sectors would collapse. The government, if you want to have a total ban, that would kill off our room for survival. That doesn't make sense to me. I just want to say that the government should not go too far. I'm forced to speak out here because I want the government to take consideration of our comments and views and not actually impose such a blanket ban. And so that we can continue with our work in the logistics field. Hong Kong needs stability and prosperity. Thank you. Number 23, Mr. Ng Chat Hang. Thank you, Chairman. On the new tobacco products, as organization providing cessation service and medical services, I will urge the government to ban totally e-cigarettes and new tobacco products, including consumption and the sale of them. I know deputations, some are opposed to the proposal, smokers and non-smokers alike, or newspaper vendors, tobacco manufacturers. I know they're opposed to the government's plan, but we want to strike a balance here. I hope that the government can consider and remember that we're talking about a public health policy here. And the basic premise is that we need to protect the public from being exposed to the harm of tobacco products. That is, we need to step up our efforts to steer smokers away from tobacco products, including smokers and non-smokers alike. So a total ban is the most effective. Talking about banning e-cigarettes and other new products, people have asked, why don't we ban traditional cigarettes? The answer is simple, because in banning e-cigarettes, we are trying to stop the rise of new products and to avoid a rebound in the number of smokers. The government has a clear goal that by 2025 the smoking rate can be reduced to 7.5%. When the rate is 5% or less, then that the condition will be right, the time will be right for a total ban on all cigarettes. And also, 8 years ago, we had not had a chance to stop the public from smoking and importation of cigarettes. Right now, many more people have become smokers. I heard just then very happily that many smokers said they wanted to quit. So if we let e-cigarettes and e-tobacco or other new tobacco products to come to the market, then we need to learn the past lesson and not to repeat what we had failed to do, that is to cause new products to endanger or to put the new generation, the young generation, at risk. And it's also said that many smokers switched to e-cigarettes or HMB products to help them quit. As an organization providing cessation services, I'm very pleased to hear non-smokers hope to quit. We want to support the government's policy, and we've been providing a lot of services to help them quit. We never encourage non-smokers using substitutes to help them quit, because there are all sorts of ways for you to stop the smoking habit. Because the substitutes also contain nicotine and tar. If you switch to e-cigarettes, then your craving for tobacco would not drop. So I hope that the government can truly, seriously consider, if our goal is to ban cigarettes across the board or reduce the smoking population rate, then we should not let or allow for the consumption of and sale of e-cigarettes. Thank you. Number 24, Ms. Lee Mack. Good morning. Here we've got a table drawn by our Good Smokers Coalition. We have more than 5,000 members. You may not be able to see the pie charts, but please note the blue portion, the orange portions. You can show that about 60% of the pie chart in blue are people who say that they will continue to smoke even if there are smuggled e-cigarettes. The little orange portion are people who said that they will report on smuggled or supply of smuggled cigarettes. The red portion shows that if all the e-cigarettes are banned, then they will go back to conventional cigarettes. And the blue portion here, the blue portion show that more than 90% of people, respondents, are totally opposed to the ban. Our Good Smokers Alliance always have good internal communication. I'm very pleased to hear that 50% of the young people have switched to HNB products in the past 2 years. About 10% said that they had quit successfully. For those who are using e-cigarettes, they also smoke less cigarettes now. So for health purpose and so forth, well, I know that there are lots of factors that put our health at risk. Young people nowadays, why are they born with kidney diseases and other problems? I think that's probably because of the consumption of canned meat. WHO has listed 10 junk food, garbage food, but they do not include cigarettes. But more, the list includes chips, potato chips, or processed meat. So that's what people are concerned about the health. Pay attention to. For the claim about addiction, the educators say that young people become addicted to e-cigarettes. But I think a more serious form of addiction is that of being addicted to smartphones. You can see people getting in and out of vehicles, staring at their screens. And some MTR station had to retrieve smartphones being dropped to the gap between the platform and the MTR train. And there are babies or toddlers who are the age of 2 only, who are stuffed with a smartphone by the parents when they cry. And the babies stop crying when they are given the smartphone. So isn't that a kind of craving? People have said that if you are a 2-year-old and at a young age you become glued to the screen, that could lead to all sorts of health issues. I found that policymakers are strange. They seems like they just react to wherever there are more voices made without taking into full consideration of various factors.
點解而家
We have said that e-cigarettes are less harmful, but how come all of a sudden the education sector now making so much noises against them? Thank you. Thank you for your views. So I may now ask the administration to respond. Secretary for Food and Health, please. Thank you. Thank you, deputations, for spending your time this morning here. This morning, I heard views already, which are supportive of the government's plan to totally ban e-cigarettes and alternative smoking products. And others gave their own views, however. Let me reiterate that the government, in terms of our tobacco control policies, that we hope that we want to see that there can be reduction in any form of usage of tobacco products. So all along we've been taking a multi-pronged approach. This amendment is just one of our initiatives only. So for smokers, we have allocated much resources to help them quit. You all know that quitting the habit takes time. Therefore, we need to allocate resources in providing all sorts of services. Maybe the existing services or ways, may not be useful or effective to some smokers, but still, some have managed to quit successfully. Most importantly, the cessation methods now are based on sufficient scientific evidence, because various studies have shown that they could help people quit the habit. They are international evidence, not just local evidence. And you've also mentioned that the new tobacco products have less harm, or they do not produce smoke. But let me reiterate, any form of tobacco products is harmful. Any contact with harmful substances in tobacco, there isn't such thing as a safety level. And the alternative smoking products are proven to emit cancer-causing and toxic substances. Long-term exposure to them could harm or damage health. So reducing the emission of toxic substances doesn't mean that the harm to health is minimized or reduced. So we feel that the government, we need to be, we are obliged to protect public health. So you may think that the new tobacco products have less harm. Well, the government really needs, do more education, provide more educational services, as mentioned by some deputations. We need to step up our education. And I agree that if we were to increase public education, that would actually help the public not just know about the harm of traditional tobacco products, but also the public need to be informed about the problems associated and the harm associated with new tobacco products. We will step up our educational efforts. There's also the mention that studies done in the past. We have collected a number of studies and on youth health. In Japan, the studies there shown that the new tobacco products, well, we keep worrying about, young people, they're being attracted to the new tobacco products and end up or having the gateway effect and ended up destroying the effectiveness of our tobacco control policy over the years. In Japan, they have a new tobacco products. A study involving 8,000 people, a longitudinal study done, showed that, of the 8,000 young people polled who had taken heated cigarettes. In 2015, the percentage of consumption is 0.6% in terms of smoking, but by 2017, the figure rose largely to 2%.
至19歲。
For those between 15 and 19, that was the figure. For those that are 20 and 29, in 2015, 1%. It has risen to 5.8% in 2017. We don't want members of the public to just switch from one toxic product to or hazardous product to another hazardous product. If it runs counter to our tobacco control policy, then we will have to do something. Of course, our goal is to reduce the smoking rate as much as possible. If we allow new tobacco products to enter the market, as I've said, will pose a lot of difficulties and it would run counter to our policy. You may recall that back in the 1980s, there was legislation to ban the import of smokeless tobacco products. In a lot of countries in the world, they face the same problem. But smokeless tobacco products have posed plenty of hazards. Back in the 1980s, as I said, that the legislation to ban smokeless tobacco products has proved to be effective. We have given it a lot of thoughts, so we hope that you would support us. A deputation talked about the Greater Bay Area. One of the cities therein, Macau, has banned e-cigarettes and heat-not-burn cigarettes. Now I open the floor for members to ask questions. Each member will have 4 minutes. We have Shiu Ka-fei, Cheng Chung Tai, and Jeremy Tan. Thank you. I thank deputations and individuals for coming to speak to us, even though it's a Saturday. What I'd like to say first is that this is the third meeting of a public hearing, and so far this is the second one of this week. This is a Saturday. It will last the whole day. I don't mind coming back on a Saturday, but at the same time there is a meeting of the development panel talking about Land Out tomorrow, and there is another one on national anthem. We have to attend 3 meetings. I don't know what pressure the Secretariat is under. Everything is bunched up. Which meeting do I go? Is it the case that the other 2 meetings are less important? We need to legislate, but you need to give us time to do our work. The second thing I'd like to say, well, I attend every session. Well, Secretary, I respect you. I know you're very hardworking. You've done a lot of work for Hong Kong people, but I don't see eye to eye with you in this regard. Starting from the Council on Smoking and Health, well, and some education groups, they have been talking about e-cigarettes only. The research is about e-cigarettes. Youngsters smoke e-cigarettes. How come that it's now extended to heat-not-burn cigarettes? And that's the point I've been arguing with you about. You have not given me sufficient evidence to tell me about how hazardous a heat-not-burn cigarette is. You've only mentioned about one thing, and that is just about e-cigarettes. The Secretary spent a lot of time to say that these products might pose less harm but still harmful. I can't argue with you on this logic. but there are many products that pose hazards to the public. Say, for example, canned food. Just now, the WHO said that, well, children should not have access to smartphones. So nearly everything is hazardous. It's only a matter of degree. I respect the Bureau. Yes, you need to remind Hong Kong people, but Hong Kong people should have a choice. I stand my ground because, let me tell you, there are only 3 places, Macau, Singapore, and Thailand, that ban these products. Well, in Macau, well, you can bring heat-not-burn cigarettes in and out of Macau. And there was a report saying that visitors going to Macau, going to Greater Bay Area, well, the heat-not-burn cigarette device will cost about $1,000. And if they want to come to Hong Kong, they can't bring the device with them, so they have to throw them. They may decide not to come to Hong Kong because that will cost as much as a hotel room. How come that Hong Kong decides to be so advanced in this regard? Well, you mentioned about 30 countries, but you don't make any comparisons of countries on a par with us. You only cite third world countries. I'm really puzzled. Can you come up with any report that is about heat-not-burn cigarettes being hazardous? I'm still waiting for the report. Can I hear from the Secretary? Mr. Xu, you have used all your time. Secretary. Thank you. Last time you asked for the researchers, we have given you the information. You mean the one dated the 18th of March? Yes, we have given it to you. I have read the 18th of March. I don't agree with it. Well, there is a Department of Health in the UK. Have you actually read their report? We have given reference to all reports all over the world. I may defer to Dr. Feng Ying. Heat-not-burn is a new product. Well, the existing studies are done by tobacco companies or manufacturers. There are more and more independent studies being conducted. We have to look into the information. Let's see if Dr. Feng can give you more information about heat-not-burn cigarettes. If you refer to NDA or toxicology associations, well, in relation to the data about heat-not-burn cigarettes, it's mostly about an analysis on the content. Well, most of the information is supplied by tobacco companies or manufacturers because it's rather new. Independent studies is limited. Independent scientists and independent research will have to be done on the information supplied by manufacturers. We have just started seeing information and researches about hazards posed to users, and as to whether heat-not-burn cigarettes will pose a lesser harm than e-cigarettes. So far, we don't have sufficient research available to say one way or another. Dr. Chen Chung-tai, well, I have attended these public hearings. I think it can be boiled down to 3 things. First, how come that the government not ban all tobacco products, but only focus on e-cigarettes? The e-cigarettes is an alternative for smokers, Another thing is that if they choose to ban e-cigarettes, it's just like what Mr. Shilkafai said. Why do you lump heat-not-burn cigarettes with e-cigarettes? Because they are two completely different things. Why do you lump them together? The third thing, which is the most important part of the controversy, well, just now the government as well as some deputations have cited Macau. Well, Macau consumption is banned. How come that when you banned the sale and import of these products, then we ask because you created an illicit market, and why don't you ban the consumption of these products? If you say that is to protect public health, and you used a ban to deprive people of the right to choose, how come that you only ban the sale but not the consumption? Can you explain to us, Secretary? Thank you, Dr. Chang, for his comments. We have said many times that under our existing tobacco control policy, we would like to reduce the consumption and use of tobacco products as much as possible using many different initiatives and measures. Legislation is one of them. Of course, regarding traditional cigarettes, we try to reduce the smoking rate. We hope that by 2025 we would reduce the number of smokers to 7.8%. Well, there is a world goal that the smoking rate should be brought down to 5%. In Hong Kong, there are about 600,000 smokers. We use a lot of resources to help them to quit, hoping to reduce the number of smokers so that your health can be protected. Regarding alternative tobacco products, well, these tobacco products are not just harmful. They also are more appealing to attract youngsters. We don't want our work on tobacco control to go down the drain. We also need to prevent. We have to be resolute. That's why in the 1980s, we legislated to ban the import of smokeless tobacco products. Now we see new products, and this is the approach we have adopted. We have seen some scientific evidence showing that these products are hazardous, and there is no proof showing that they pose less harm. About the ban on consumption, existing legislation prohibits the consumption of new tobacco products in non-smoking areas. Next, Ms. Jeremy Tam. I don't think it is desirable to have 3 meetings going on at the same time. Well, but one just can't ask the question here. The same questions to be asked in other meetings, say for example in the national anthem meeting as well. Well, it sounds like from what people said that e-cigarettes and heat-not-burn cigarettes is less harmful than traditional cigarettes. Well, we have read the report provided as per the follow-up issues, where 136 reports are saying that in e-cigarettes and there there are a number of harmful substances, let's say, for example, formaldehyde, and some other elements that I can't even pronounce them. Diacetyl, acetyl, propionyl, and acetone, lead, arsenic, cadmium, and antimony. Well, if you're going to consume something that contains these things, why don't you simply go straight to consume these substance? Well, for nicotine, 0.2 milligram, and there's tar. I think the content is similar to traditional cigarettes. It's just that you don't see smoke, but it doesn't mean that these substances are not there. Well, it's just that it must be an ideal poison that is odorless, tasteless, and invisible. I have children. Well, if I see smokers, I would fan the smoke away, and I would try to avoid it. But this is something that is odorless, invisible, and tasteless. I wouldn't even know that I'm exposed to it.
So there's a chance that people would think that it's less harmful and safe, and then people would neglect it's dangerous. That means that more people's health could be actually endangered as a result. Secretary, have I misinterpreted the reports? Let me know if I have. Secretary, yes, our report lists studies related to heated cigarettes, and also the substances contained and their harm. We also tested some heated cigarettes, and we found that their harmful substances, tar, nicotine content, is similar to that in the conventional cigarettes. Okay, thank you. Well, in your part on the heated cigarettes, the sugar alpha, I know cares a lot about it. It's written that there's not as much harm or harmful substances, but that doesn't mean that there's none at all. So don't think that e-cigarettes or heated cigarettes is a solution. I feel that the whole discussion is based on scientific evidence, and don't mislead us into thinking that, the tobaccos or the manufacturers, other people are saying that it's all safe to consume those products. If you have looked at the report, maybe you would have a different view. The deputations here. I hope that the government can educate the public more about the data collected, and then that will form a more appropriate basis for our discussion. Fernando Jurang next. Thank you. Well, it's really difficult for us to juggle 3 meetings. I raised my hand in the other meeting, and then yet here I was constantly reminded to speak, and suddenly, I had to queue up for another chance to speak in another meeting. I pressed the button already. So I don't know why electrical, is arranging meetings like that to have 3 meetings in the same morning. It totally deprives us of our chance to really fulfill our duty. Well, my stance on this issue is very clear. I support the ban on e-cigarettes and HNB products. All the claims that they are not as harmful, to me, they mean they are still harmful. Jeremy Tam made it clear just then the chemical substances, indisputably, you must admit that they are harmful nonetheless. The harm in comparison with conventional cigarettes may be less, but if you use WHO standards, the harmful substances have no so-called safety threshold. They are harmful. The harm exists no matter how much harm there is. So we don't want, particularly now that e-cigarettes, heated cigarettes have attracted so many young people. So we need to make the point clear to them. As for your point, that, well, shouldn't we ban traditional cigarettes as well? Well, I said this before. I support a total ban on conventional cigarettes. There's no dispute about that. Everyone knows traditional cigarettes are equally harmful, and the harm, well, as shown by much literature, does exist. It's nothing disputable anymore. Even tobacco companies will acknowledge that. And that's why they created a new product to expand the market. They know that the market for conventional cigarettes is declining. So the whole matter is really linked to profit margins. The three public hearings showed to us that, the power of profits is so huge. Why are there so many people coming up to speak in favor of not banning the new harmful products? I think it's very obvious. I'm sure that it has to do with the profit-driven motive. I hope that the government will not stop its act. Besides stopping new tobacco products from coming to the market, causing particularly young people to smoke, I think traditional cigarettes should be banned as well. So that should be the direction that we're moving into. I know we can't achieve that overnight, but tobacco is really hazardous to health, not just your own health, but other people's. That's even more unacceptable indeed. We're talking reason here today. I know there are different interests, commercial interests, represented here, various market considerations, but I think the health considerations should be above all other commercial interests. Whether the government or I hope the government can stand firm. I don't want to see that ultimately, that the government would say because of divided views, then you would delay implementing the amendment. If that's the case, then young people will be endangered. Any response, Secretary? Okay, simple response, please. Thank you, Mr. Fernando Zhang, for your view. We would not stop our act. Tobacco control policy is a key measure policy against the spread of non-communicable diseases, because smoking is one of the 4 key factors behind non-communicable diseases. Therefore, for the prevention of those diseases, we must decrease smoking rate. That's an important method we use. So for the sake of public health, we must continue with our policy. We have an overall plan in mind. Okay, let me speak for a few minutes, and then we'll finish this session. And then after a 5-minute rest, the second session will begin. Personally, I'm sure you all know, I support the government's amendment. I believe that there's nothing as a safe or unsafe, no such thing as safe or unsafe cigarettes. Whether it's heated or not, they're all hazardous to health, and the society pay a heavy cost for the diseases or the health problems caused. Personally, I find that, actually I heard more girlfriends saying to me that they didn't smoke before, but they now smoke e-cigarettes and heated cigarettes because it's odorless. Because before they felt that if they smoked, then people would feel can be exposed to the odor from them. But now that they feel that it's quite in to smoke e-cigarettes. It's like chic, something chic to them. Parents also told me that they found that their kids who are in secondary school are smoking heated cigarettes because it's odorless and colorless. And these kids are smoking in cigarette. But people are saying that heated cigarettes are very expensive. You find the brand name ones, they could cost $1,000 to $2,000. How can the young kids afford them? But you can find them actually at a cost of only $100 at Taobao, online shopping mall. So once you allow the trend to go up, it would not be stoppable. I understand that various members of the public have different stance. My stance is very clear. If you ask me, should we ban conventional cigarettes? I would say that if possible, we should ban them altogether. But of course, the fact is that's political reality. It's a legacy of history. If you want to ban conventional tobacco products, I'm sure it will backfire. I'm sure, and difficult to achieve anyway. I've heard from principals, parents, teachers about their views, and also heard from other members of the public who support the government's amendment. I understand other deputations have their own stance, but my stance is very clear. So I hope that the government can stand firm. Any response, Secretary? Thank you, Chairman, for your views. On the one hand, for the new tobacco products, we are deeply worried about them. It's not just the government, but we have heard from other people and looked at local studies that reflected that young people, parents, teachers, medical officers, and even many other people hope that we can ban the new products. For the sake of protecting public health, particularly our young generation. Well, I mentioned that, I mentioned a study in Japan. That's a study on heated cigarettes. Mr. Shiu has left, but we did not try to confuse things. The Japanese studies found that in a very short period of time, young people, became more and more interested in heated cigarettes. So we're very worried about that trend. So I think we are obliged to do something. Okay, let me thank all of you for coming to today's public hearing. And now we adjourn, have a rest for 5 minutes, and then we'll begin the second session when we come back.